Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for what is sure to be an inspiring conversation with three incredibly talented artists. We have with us Jenifer Matthews, Devon Ronner, and Mia Weinberg, who are currently on display in the exhibition Where the Light Gets In at the Silk Purse Arts Center. My name is Stephen Snyder. I am the Gallery and Communications Manager for the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, and we are so thrilled to present this exhibit and work with these artists in our space here at the Silk Purse, and can't wait for you to get to know a little bit more about them and their work. Uh, as I said, the Silk Purse, we're here in West Vancouver, which is on the unceded and traditional territories of the Squamish Nation. And, we fully recognize how much of a real privilege it is to be on these beautiful lands to celebrate arts and culture with and alongside our host nations and the rest of our neighbors and community. If you have any questions for any of our artists tonight or want to make a comment, you can drop those in the chat and we'll get to it a little later in this conversation. So, Where the Light Gets In opened on May 6th and runs until the 31st. So if you're watching this anytime between that time, please come on down and check it out in person. As you'll get to see the work from our three artists, it's all very complex and layered and emotional, sort of abstract artwork, trying to get to finding, the light and that spark in life. So to tell you a little bit more about themselves, we're going to meet our three talented artists. Let's start with Mia. Could you tell us a bit about you?
Hi, it's really great to be here and to be showing my work with Jenifer and Devon in such a beautiful little gallery in West Vancouver. I've been a professional artist for around 35 years now or more. I studied at Emily Carr, what was then College of Art and Design. And since graduating in 1994, I've had a varied art career going from cameraless photography, photo-based installations, to public art. Around the Lower Mainland, you can find 8 of my pieces. And then when COVID hit, I went to the studio and started painting. And I've been painting ever since. And this is really where I'm loving to be in the studio, creating abstract art, and with absolutely no preconceived idea of what I'm going to create. I have complete freedom. And I have the advantage that I can then later take my work home, and my partner, Will Weigler, who's a storyteller and writer, helps with the titling of my work. And so that is a combination that gives people something to hang on to when they see the work. So that's a brief introduction to what I do. So who's going next?
Incredible, Mia. Thank you so much for sharing. Next up, Devon, could you tell us a bit about you?
Okay. Well, I had absolutely no background in art until about 13 years ago. My palette was always language. I'm a writer and a poet. And professionally, I worked with people in therapy. And I undertook art simply as a way to have something to do with my husband, who is an artist and an architect, and took a class in abstract art and absolutely fell in love. Found that there was so much freedom in just using a new medium that was totally unfamiliar to me, and I was hooked. And I've discovered that I have a whole new vocabulary now. It's set of language, it's shapes and forms and colors. And I just want to say for any of those people listening to this, later in life, I think it is a wonderful thing to undertake some kind of creative expression that is unfamiliar to you. Because what I've discovered is like it's opened up a new room in my being, in my mind, and in my heart that I didn't know was there. And this form of expression really has revealed so much to me and connects me to such wonderful people like you, Stephen, and like these other artists and the people who come to see our art. So it's a wonderful opportunity to explore and experiment at this stage in life. And I really encourage people to do that.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Devon. Next up, Jenifer, please tell us a bit about you.
I guess I'm on the line, eh? I agree with what Devon and Mia have already said about art and the expansiveness of it, especially what Devon is saying. For me, I'm self-taught. I've taken like weekend courses, but not really. I don't have a teacher that I could name, but I've been poking around in art for 20 years plus. I originally started out with a lot of whimsy. And then the idea of abstract, which is endless, it's absolutely endless. Even though I've painted many, many pictures and been lucky enough to sell some, even with my own work, if it's in my home, I see new things all the time. That's the whole prize of abstract for me. Basically, my personality is I'm a free spirit, and abstract art is absolutely fabulous for free-spirited people because you just do it. You don't even know, I don't even know sometimes what the tools are. Maybe I go into a drawer and pull that out, but I'm in love with color, and I've traveled extensively, solo travel around the world, and it's the color of the clothing and of the buildings that has inspired me in everything that I do. I have 7 grandkids. I don't have a studio. My studio is my kitchen, which is perfect. It works perfectly for me. And I don't know, I just think the free-spirited, being able to do what we want to do, sometimes we're lucky, but there's a big happiness in it. And there's also the opposite at times when things don't work out so well, but you just paint over it and start over again. I'm very happy to be here with you all.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing, Jenifer. I love, even off the top of the bat, freedom has come up with all three of you. I think that's a really great connection between all of you and your work, and very true, like you said. Art making is about can be about freedom of expression and creativity.
Yeah.
And the freedom that you all have in your work is very impressive, the way you're able to sort of just let it all out. And we will get to see some of that in just a moment. But first, because it's a little time sensitive, I just wanted to say, someone watching, Loris Sokula Art, Lois Sokula Art, who's watching, says they're only here for the first 30 minutes because they have to go. But they say, Mia, they're really happy to see you, and we'll listen to the rest of the conversation later when they have time. So yeah, again, anyone watching, drop a comment, and we'll get to it as we go. Next up, we're going to take just a quick little tour of the exhibit, just to give you a little taste of what to expect when you come see it. So we're just going to pull that up right now. Excellent. So this is our the exhibit here at the Silk Purse, just a quick sort of 360 of the gallery space. And then just kind of coming in off the sidewalk entrance, you've got these 2 great pieces, one from Jenifer, one from Devon, and then we go into the gallery proper. This is actually the opposite of the gallery. So then now this is the entrance from the waterfront, where we start with Devon's work. These great textures and moody colors. And then we move on to some more of Jenifer's work. That love of color you mentioned is quite evident in these pieces. And then we come to this really wonderful piece here from Mia. And then on the other side of our space, there's another one of Jenifer's works. Yeah, and then we come up to the rest of Mia's body of work with these great sort of smaller pieces. Again, lots of, like the other two, lots of great texture and color to really get absorbed in. And as you can see watching, some of our artists have left some little write-ups beside each of their pieces, sort of expressing a little bit about what they were feeling or what they were thinking about with these artworks. So that's it. That's the show. Just a quick little sample to get your appetites whetted so you can come on in and see everything in person. Now, each of our artists have chosen one of the works on display to talk a little bit more about. So we're going to start off with Jenifer. I'll just pull up your piece here. Excellent. Yeah, Jenifer, could you please tell us about this?
Oh, thank you. It looks really nice on the screen, Stephen. Thank you very much. Well, this one I called Where Light Enters. And there's a reason for that. Initially, I wanted to call it The Wedding. But as I was painting this, it took me a long, long time to do this one. What happened was the light actually came inside me. I'm very spiritual. It came in me and allowed me to listen to what my brushes wanted to do. So really, I did it, but I was guided by the light, and it fit perfectly with the name of the show as the title. But I also only chose 3 colors here other than black and white. So I used yellow, blue, and red. And what I wanted to do was do the different mixes with the blue and the red to get the mauves, all the different, from the bright, from the dark, the saturated, all the way down to the lighter, and blend it with the others. And then used all different kinds of brushes. There's some energy in here that I think is quite lovely. It's light but moving. It's an energy of joy. I see that as joyous. It's the most difficult painting I've ever done because it's not that big, but I find smaller paintings harder than bigger ones. And I don't know the reason for that, but that's just what goes on. But anyways, that is the contrast, the color, the light, the saturation of paint, the different shapes, the dark versus the light, putting the black close by, you get depth. So I wanted to take it down so it looks like it's in a room. And that round grayish oval, it actually looks like a light hanging. So that's my story of this in a nutshell.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing, Jenifer. I love the pointing out how that shape just up in the right-hand corner does kind of look like a hanging lamp to bring in all this light. That's great. Another great thing about abstract work, right, is you can kind of make your own stories. I'm curious about
The other thing I didn't say, but I need to mention after you've been talking, is I can turn this painting anyway, and that changes. A good abstract painting is you can change it any way, and it will all make sense differently, but it will be a beautiful painting. So if I swung that over sideways, it would be a very different feel for it.
That's very interesting. I think that kind of goes back to a little bit about what you were saying about when you were making this, is how you let the brushes guide you. Is that sort of how you always work?
Well, if I don't work that way, I get into trouble, and that happens a fair bit too. But there was one instance where I was really struggling with some inner pain my background is social work in inner city schools, so I know about depth and working and, processing stuff. What happened was I was in a foul mood and very sad one day, and I had a hideous painting that I was going to paint over and just make it worse. And just as I started, the brush, it chose its color, and all of a sudden, these magnificent white, simple tulips showed up. And I knew that it was showing me there's another side to life, and I just let it happen, and it sold instantly. So these have been my experiences, not always, but they're the ones that why I keep painting. I'm absolutely addicted to it. It's fun.
Incredible. Well, this is an okay addiction. I'm glad you're stuck with this. Excellent. Next up, Devon has chosen a work, so I'm just gonna get that going for us. Awesome. So Devon, could you please tell us about this piece?
Okay, so I call this Moonrise, and all of my titles and all my understanding of what I've painted happens after the fact.
Yeah.
I never intended to do a moonrise. What and I start with just usually a decision about color, a palette, and this is a limited palette, using a variety of different blues and mixing different blues and using a little bit of orange red in contrast. But that's how I start. And in fact, why don't we start with how I started? That's how I started. I had the canvas vertically, not horizontally, and I had some dark colors, and I just used a big fat brush and slushed it on there, and I let the drips happen. And that is the part of painting, the play part, the beginning part of abstract painting, which is absolutely pure joy. And very much as Mia spoke, I then let the painting begin to direct me, give me information about what next. And I'm often moving the canvas around in very different ways. So that ultimately, the way it did wind up after many layers, there are many, many layers of color and paint, and actually some collage in this as well, some paper. This is where I landed. I love texture, and I create texture by various ways, partly by collage, partly by building up layers of paint and then scratching through. And this one was just a tremendous amount of pleasure to create. And then once I got the sort of the upper round shape in, it really spoke to me of my experiences. We've had a recreational property in the Gulf Islands, and there are times when you go down to the water when you see the moon in the sky and you see the moon in the water. And to me, it feels like such a privilege to live in this part of the world and to have the opportunity to experience these moments. And so eventually, I didn't set out to do this, but eventually that's what this painting became for me. And then I introduced some other media. I have some colored pencil that I have put in. I have splashes. One of the fun things is to take a brush with some paint on it and just let it splash against the canvas, and you get all sorts of different effects. And to me, that the freedom has to do with play. It has to do with experimentation. It has to do it with not getting wedded to an outcome. And then there is a stage at which you need to make some more curatorial choices to say, okay, this is fun, looks good, but for it to become a really better painting, you need to bring in elements of contrast. You need to bring elements of variety. You need to kind of look how is the eye traveling around the page. the canvas, the page. That's the writer in me. And so that's the latest stage. But I can tell you I sit with a painting for a long time and I experiment in many different ways before I get to the stage where I make those kind of choices. And then it's very satisfying to say, okay, this came out of me. And then it's a very interesting experience. Once it's done, I don't feel in any way identified with the painting, which has been an interesting experience for me because as a writer, no matter what happens, when my writing is done, whether it's a poem or a story, I still feel identified with the work through language.
Mm.
But it feels quite separate for me, and I'm a little bit amazed at what I've created. And I'm very grateful that I've found this path at this stage in my life,
Yeah.
and it's wonderful to share it with you.
That
Great.
is fantastic, Devon. Thank you. It's so interesting that last little part you mentioned about, feeling a little, a little separated from the work, because as you were talking, you're kind of letting everything flow and kind of come out of you. So then at the end, when you're done and you're reflecting and kind of seeing, uh, what it was all about, how do you sort of reconcile that, that this came from you, but it's a little bit removed from you?
I don't reconcile it. I just live with the reality of it. I feel like I've been identified with language so much that that's a part of who I am. But since the art part is really relatively new in the last 10, 15 years, it just is there, and I marvel at it, and I don't know where it comes from, and I just feel grateful.
Great.
That's incredible. And, you mentioned creating a vocabulary. You can definitely see in your work that you have developed your own visual language. There's repeating textures, some shapes, some colors, at least in the body of work that you have on display here. So there really is, that language that you've created.
Yeah, I was definitely into a circle stage for a long time.
Thank you so much for sharing, Devon. Next up, Mia has chosen an incredible piece, so let's check that out. Oh, there we go. My computer's just giving me a little bit of tricks, but I think we're good to go now. Awesome. Yes, Mia, please tell us about this great work.
Well, this piece is called All Before Me is Open. And for me, it's about optimism and about moving forward in the light. So it seemed very appropriate for our show. In some of my works, I use collage, but this piece is just paint. And as you can see, heavily textured. And I create the texture in the gesso, in the first sort of underpainting. I do a smooth layer to seal the wood panels that I work on. And then I put a very thick layer and create the texture. And those 5 lines that sort of look like trails or paths in the center, I put 5 ball bearings on my wet painting. And then I tipped it as they rolled through the gesso. They created these lines, and I'm not sure if you can see on your screen, but there are little sort of herringbone patterns in those sort of grooves. And that was all created by the ball bearings. So to me, it's part of physics. It's the viscosity of the gesso and the weight of the ball bearings and the angle I was tipping it at. And to me, this is again sort of the randomness of what I put in the painting beforehand, like the texture on the far right in the bottom. I dropped a a chain that was sort of not balls, but sort of looped chain. I dropped it on and pulled it off the gesso. And so I have all these different ways of creating textures. And it's only once I start pulling out using the acrylic paint to draw out what I've put in there that I start to create a painting. And I actually don't work in the same way as Jenifer, where she talked about that a painting could be any way up. Often people ask me, when do I know when a painting is done? And I usually say that when the painting settles in one orientation is when I know that I'm getting to, to not necessarily that it's finished, but that I know the direction I'm going in and what to work on more as regards the orientation of the painting. And I use the paint and sometimes watercolor pencils to emphasize certain areas, to add depth. I use sandpaper a lot, and I have an electric sander, a cordless one that I often use. So in this particular painting, all the white that you see is actually the gesso from the base layer. So there's no white paint in this painting. It's because I've sanded back the color that I put on top. Cool. And yes, this is a 20 by 24 inch painting, which for me is actually quite large. For the first sort of 3 years of doing paintings, I was only doing paintings that were 8 inches square or 8 by 10 inches. And so now I'm venturing to larger panels. I do have one painting that is 3 foot by 5 foot. And I've been challenged to paint on the panels I have that are 4 foot by 5 foot that are in my studio. And this time next year, I'll have something else to show.
Great.
Look forward to seeing what comes next. There's so much experimentation going on, like you mentioned, with creating these textures and using different materials to make the shapes and textures, and then your paint and pencil, crayon, and sanding and all of that. With your extensive career, moving from lens-based work to public art to now to the sort of mixed media painting. Why all the experimentation? Why not just focus on sort of one thing and stick with it?
That's not who I am. And I think also the public art really incorporated a lot of my background, in that my first career was in materials technology and engineering, and then going to art school and then doing public art sort of brought all that together. But what I have with creating these abstract paintings is complete freedom. I don't have to worry about whether it's vandal proof or whether it'll withstand 50 below in Edmonton, or engineering details, or negotiating with local authorities, the city or municipality. So for me, this now has given me, I never planned for painting to be my art practice, but once I started it, I found that people really relate to my work and that they find significant meaning in it. And I wasn't expecting that, but it's brought me great joy and satisfaction that I have something important to offer the world. And I think it was Devon saying earlier about responding to what's on the canvas. I did an art course in Northern British Columbia a number of years ago, and our instructor would say, respond, respond, respond. And that is really what I'm doing now, in that I create the textures and then I'm responding to them, and I'm responding to the colors. And it is very much a relationship between me and what's going on the panel. and it just brings me immense delight.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing. Again, a lot of words repeating, experimentation, joy. It's great to hear. I have a question about sort of the overall sort of theme of the exhibit. For those of you who don't know watching, probably most of you, how our exhibits, how the West Van Arts Council, how we put our exhibits together is we do a call for artists and we have a jury and they look at all of the many submissions and then they put, they recommend artists from those submissions they put together based upon, you know, theme, style, materials, etc. And so our jury for 2026 put you fantastic artists together. And then something that I like to do as a way for you all to sort of get to know each other and know your work is to see what you come up with for a title. And you all came up with Where the Light Gets In. And I would just love to know a little bit more about how that happened and maybe what that phrase means to each of you in regards to your artwork.
Devon, do you want to?
Okay. Well, Mia and I got together, and unfortunately, Jenifer was dealing with an injury and she couldn't actually be physically with us. But it was the first time that Mia and I met, and I don't know, I can't quite recall. Maybe you can fill us in, Mia, on how we got to the notion of that in these difficult times or in any times where even if an individual is going through a hard time, that there is some place where there can be light and where the value of, first of all, recognizing the light and making more space for the light. And it's a very difficult time for many people now all over the globe. And it can be very easy to get lost in the darkness. So we really wanted this exhibition to express how each of us have come to celebrate and leave space for the light, even though there's a lot of darkness that we could get distracted by. And it's kind of like a buttress against the difficulty and the darkness in the world right now. And we came up with a bunch of different ones with light, and we sent them off to Jenifer, and we sent them off to you, Steve. And this is the one that seemed to have the most resonance. And I'm really thrilled that it stuck so well. I think it really captured something about all of us, which we didn't even know at the time when we met. And we certainly didn't know when you put us together. So
Yes, nope, I'm muted.
no, Mia, you just turned yourself off. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, just technology. I think part of it is, I mean, when I think Where the Light Gets In, I do think about Leonard Cohen and his song about cracks. And I actually have a passion for cracks. I like anything with the patterns of cracks. I'm fascinated by. And that aspect that things that sometimes can seem bad aren't always bad, and that they can actually bring us to something better or different. And that to a certain extent, dark emphasizes the light. I mean, you can see this piece behind me that has a lot of dark and light, and the light wouldn't shine in the same way if there wasn't something darker around it. And I think to a certain extent that's, you know, seeing our works together, which, as Devon said, we had never met, we hadn't seen each other's work before we were put together. But I think our works work so well together because we do, all three of us have aspects of some darkness, but there's a light. And I think people have said about my work that it's a bit like resilience, where it's like there is darkness, but there is something else that's coming through that.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what we sort of latched onto for the title of the show, and the sort of commonality between our works. I mean, even the piece behind Jenifer now too
Oh,
sort of
yeah.
has that,
Yeah.
you know, dark and light,
Yeah.
together.
I'd like to add one thing is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I just have to say to the three of you and Stephen and the jurors that to me it's impossibly wonderful that the three of us, even how we described, we don't have an idea at the beginning what we're going to paint, and we watch it go, and it is astounding to me how well we sync together. Very different art, but it syncs. There's no competition, but it works.
Here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the three of you are on some kind of similar wavelength,
Totally.
even though you're so different.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I appreciate three of you sharing your time with us and sharing these insights into who you are as artists and into your work and who you are as people. It's been really fantastic. And thank you all for watching. If you are watching this anytime before May 31st, please come on down to the Silk Purse here in West Vancouver to check out Where the Light Gets In with Jenifer Matthews, Devon Ronner, and Mia Weinberg. So thank you all again for this fantastic conversation. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
And if you want to know more about our talented artists, there's links in the description of this video to their websites or social media, so you can follow them and see what they get up to in the future. And if you have enjoyed this conversation, consider liking and subscribing, and we will see you next time with another conversation about art. Take care.
Thank you.